The Little Match Girl. It was dreadfully cold. It was snowing fast and getting dark. The last evening of the old year was dawning in, but cold and dark as it was, the poor little girl with the bare head and feet was still wandering about the streets. When she had left home, she had been wearing slippers, but they had been much too large for her feet. Indeed, they really belonged to her mother, and they had dropped off her feet while she had been running very fast across the road to get out of the way of two carriages. One of the slippers was completely lost. The other had been snatched up by a boy who ran off with it, thinking it might come in handy one day. So the little girl walked on, her bare feet quite red and blue with the cold. She carried a small bundle of matches in her hand, and a good many more in her tattered apron. No one had bought any of them the whole long day. No one had given her a single penny. Trembling with cold and hunger, she crept on, looking forlorn and sorrowful. Poor little child. The snowflakes fell on her long, fair hair, which curled with pretty ringlets over her shoulders, but she was not aware of her own beauty. The lights were glimmering through every window, and the smell of roast goose reached her from several houses. It was New Year's Eve, and it was of this that she thought. In a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected beyond the other, she cowered down, drawing her little feet close under her. But it did not help. She could not get warm, and she dared not go home. She had not sold a single box of matches. She earned not a single penny. Perhaps her father would beat her. Besides, her home was almost as cold as the street. It was an attic, and the wind and snow penetrated through the many chinks in the roof, although they were stopped up with straw and rags. Her little hands were numb with cold. One little match from her bundle would warm them, perhaps, if she dared to light it. She drew one out and struck it against the wall. It sputtered and burned. It was a bright, warm flame, and she held her hands over it. It was quite an illumination for that poor little girl, I said rather a magic taper, for it seemed to her as though she were sitting in front of a large iron stove with brass ornaments, so beautifully it blazed the fire within. It was like a miracle. The child stretched out her feet to warm them too, but alas, in an instant the flame had died away. The stove vanished. The little girl sat cold and comfortless, with the burnt match in her hands. It was dreadfully cold. A second match was struck against the wall. It kindled, blazed, and wherever its light fell, the wall became transparent as if it were a veil. The little girl could look into the room within. She saw the table spread with a snow-white damask cloth, whereupon sat sparkling china dishes. The roast goose stuffed with apples and plums stood on one end, piping hot, and, which was pleasant of all to see, the goose, with a knife and fork still in her breast, jumped down from the table and waddled along the floor right up to the poor child. But suddenly the match was burnt out, and only the thick, hard wall was beside her. It was dreadfully cold. The girl kindled a third match. Again the flame shot up, and now she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree, far larger and far more prettily decked out than the one she had seen last Christmas Eve through the glass door of the rich merchant's house. Hundreds of candles lighted up the green branches, and tiny painted figures, such as she had seen in the shop windows, looked down upon her from the tree. The child stretched out her hands towards him in delight, and at that moment the light from the match was quenched. But the Christmas candles burned brighter and brighter. They looked to her like stars in heaven, and now one of them fell, the light streaming behind it, with a long fiery tail. "Someone is dying now," said the little girl softly, for she had once been told by her old grandmother, the only person who had ever been kind to her, and who was now dead, that whenever a star falls, an immortal spirit returns to God who had created it. It was dreadfully cold. The little girl struck yet another match against the wall, and it flared up, and surrounded by its light, the same dear old grandmother appeared before her, gentle and loving as always, but bright and happy as she had never looked during her lifetime. "Grandmother!" exclaimed the child. "Oh, take me with you. I know you will soon vanish as soon as the match is out. You'll disappear like the fire stove, and the splendid rose goes like the beautiful Christmas tree." She hastily lighted all the remaining matches in the bundle, lest her grandmother should disappear, and the matches burned with such a blaze of splendor that noonday could scarcely have been brighter. Never had the good old grandmother looked so tall and stately, so beautiful and kind. She took the little girl into her arms, and they both flew together. Joyfully and gloriously they flew higher and higher, till they were in that place where neither cold nor hunger nor pain is ever known. They were in paradise. In the cold morning hour, crouching in the corner by the wall, the poor little girl was found, her cheeks glowing, her lips smiling, frozen to death on the last night of the old year. The New Year's sun shone on the lifeless child, who was sitting there motionless, with the matches in her lap, one bundle of them completely burnt out. "She has been trying to warm herself, poor thing," people said, but no one knew of the sweet visions she had beheld.